We know how much you love talking about player feedback, and we do too. What's up, everybody? This is Let's Talk Customer Feedback, and I'm your host, Natalie. Thanks for listening, and thanks for telling your Player Insights Pro friends about us. This is Season 3, so let's get right into it. The gaming industry expects another booming year in both excitement and sales. But with the launch of many new games comes the realization that the market becomes even more crowded and the bar is raised yet again in all aspects, including games' complexity levels, design, story, and character features. So, can leveraging player feedback help with this? Let's find out with today's special guest. In the games industry, there seems to be an endless battle for players. With the number of game downloads and purchases growing tremendously in recent years, it's safe to say that video games are becoming increasingly popular among consumers all over the world, and creating an excellent player experience for a game is no easy job. So what should game studios be looking into in order to stay on top of the competitive games market and provide the ultimate player experience? Hello and welcome to Affogata's podcast, Let's Talk Customer Feedback. I'm Natalie, your host today, and I have the pleasure of hosting Joshua Johnson, Director Solutions Architecture at EdgeNext. So, hi, Joshua. I'm so happy to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Natalie, and thank you. I really enjoy being here, and I'm very appreciative of being asked to join.
We're super happy to have you here. And before we start, it would be great if we have a short intro from you. So can you tell us about yourself and what does EdgeNext do?
Sure. As you mentioned, my name is Joshua Johnson. I am the Director of Solutions Architecture for EdgeNext. I've been in the technology industry for, about 25 years. Spent a lot of time in the CDN industry with multiple companies, working from anywhere from, pre-sales to post-sales support to operations, building infrastructures, helping deploy them, et cetera. At this point, working for EdgeNext and helping to bring customers to EdgeNext to use the services and products that we provide, which are, acceleration services, security services, and so forth, specifically directed towards different gaming industries, whether it's video game industries, iGaming industries, along with, pretty much e-commerce, anything that you can think of that needs acceleration, security, and edge computing technologies.
Great. That's actually very interesting. And it's really interesting because both Affogata and EdgeNext are two companies that are really helping game studios to provide the best possible game experience for players. So it's great to have you here today. Thank you for the intro. And before we start with the more serious questions, we have a short story from our Tales from the Feedback Crypt.
For the release of Resident Evil 5, Capcom tried to emulate a trick used by the producers of the Batman film, The Dark Knight. The Batman idea was to distribute Joker cards all over a few cities to get folks excited about the movie. Capcom, they chose body parts instead. Imagine if you would be taking a nice walk around London and you stumbled upon a head. What bad could come of that? The idea was that the person who found the most severe limbs and other body parts would win a trip to Africa to celebrate the game's new location. The publicity stunt went wrong for two reasons. Many folks took the body parts and simply kept them for some bizarre reason, or even worse, mistook them for real ones and contacted the authorities. The second problem was that the parts were smeared in chicken livers and blood, making them a huge contamination risk due to salmonella and other foodborne diseases. Thank you for joining me, and see you next week on Tales from the Feedback Crypt.
And now, with that story in mind, we can't wait to hear what Joshua has to say today. So let's start. Now that we know what EdgeNext does, can you share with us what are the main pain points you perceive in the games industry from the game development and performance perspective?
Well, the main thing is I mean, and honestly, I take this partly from my own experience of working with game industries, but also my son, who is a very big gamer, gives me feedback all the time, especially when he's home and complains about the speed of our network. But issues that are happening is as the game industry is growing, the games are getting bigger and bigger. I mean, very, very dynamic games. They take a large time to download and get onto the games, or so and the game distribution is global. People are playing, you've got people playing, in Asia, you've got people playing simultaneously in North America, in the Middle East and Europe, all over simultaneously playing games. So, one of the biggest issues is the ability to actually get the game to the end user. The games, I was just recently at Gamescom this past fall in Germany.
In Germany, yeah.
In Malta. And one of the direction that the games are going, as it's the user experience is amazing, but the interactivity, and the games are becoming very, very vivid. The technologies and the involvement of the end user is growing. And so you look at the size of these games. It used to be that you'd have a few hundred meg game, and those would download to your PC or whatever. But you look at nowadays on some of the platforms, 50 gigabytes is the size of a game to download, because the world that they've created is just so incredibly vivid. I was talking with a company that does compression technologies, 3D compression technologies, so that they can actually get very, 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 very great view of 3D imaging, like water and movement and so forth. But the fact of the matter is one object was like 8 gigabytes, and they had to come up with a compression technology to shrink it. So speed of download, ability to play, the ability to get those pieces of the game to the end user. And then on top of everything else, you've got security concerns. You've got live gaming that's going on. You've got people that are trying to cheat at the same time. How do you combat that? How do you make sure that during a live game, your transit speed is good? Your ability to defend against possible DDoS attacks or entered game cheating. Those are all like a lot of the pieces of the main complaints that I hear, and the things that people talk about and how they're trying to work around them.
Definitely. That's actually super interesting and a great solution for game companies, as you mentioned, that want to, again, provide the best experience for players. So that's super interesting. And we've seen that in the last 5 years, the voice of players, actually like the consumer voice in all industries, has dramatically gained a more important role in organizations, in this case, game studios. Do you see this reflected in the type of service that you provide to game studios?
Yeah, I mean, once again, the game, the players are talking about slow performance or large files, and some of the options that we provide are the ability to accelerate the download of the game to the end users, the ability to accelerate the in-game play. As I mentioned, my son tends to complain to me. It's like you look at the gaming now and some of the live gaming, and it's very interactive, and it's becoming more and more an entertainment industry. You look at the development of the streaming industry and how it's become, they built infrastructure to support it. And now the gaming industry is going that same way. And I was talking to one of the game developing companies, and they're saying that essentially what's happening is it's becoming an all-encompassing entertainment industry. You've got the gameplay, you've got the viewers watching, you've got interactive chat at the same time, and so forth. So what ends up happening, like I said, my son, he'll complain, is like they build in ping times so that the kids can watch, or the game players, I don't mean kids, but the game players can watch the speed of the response of the servers. And, we're talking, if they get 60 milliseconds or 70 milliseconds, they're starting to complain because it's not fast enough. Because
right, that's crazy.
You can't respond quickly.
Yeah. Sorry, continue.
No, and a lot of that is because when you're talking competition gaming and so forth like that, what ends up happening is those milliseconds are the difference between winning and losing a competition. And some of the money that is, you look at the esport events and so forth that are going on, the money that these teams and these players can win, it's no different than what we consider professional athletes doing and making. And it's just amazing. So yeah, what we provide as far as acceleration service and the data that can be provided back to them to enhance their games, to provide feedback as to where things lag, where things don't work, where it is adopted well, et cetera, et cetera. That's all, stuff that these people, the companies just love to have.
Right, and it's for game studios, it's great that they want to listen to the players, and players are very active in promoting what they want, but it puts a lot of pressure in these companies to be able to really be on top.
Right. I mean, the gaming industry is very, very competitive, and you look at, you've got some very, very large players, and you've got some on the outskirts, and trying to get in there and become one of those players. It's important that they listen to the end users. It's important that they say, okay, you look at a game that's developed, and you see the adoption of it, and it's like, okay, they like it, do they not like it? But they're really kind of going back to them, back to those end users, and say, what do you like about this? What is the next thing? The blog data, you look at all the YouTube videos and so forth, that kind of kids playing and so forth, and say, well, this is good and that's not good. And that is driving the industry and the changes that they adopt.
Definitely. And we would love to hear if you have any specific story in which EdgeNext helped a game studio. What was the challenge the company had, and what was the solution?
Well, one of the easiest is that, the adoption of gaming in Asia and China is very, very difficult. And luckily for us, EdgeNext has a presence in China and is able to assist in the delivery of the game assets, the game downloads and so forth to those end users in China, and the updates and so forth. I mean, even an update can be, 8 gigabytes in size. And you think about this, and you also think about the fact that there's always some kind of filtering. There's always some kind of oversight of the traffic going in and out of China. So our ability, we had a company, a very large gaming company, that wanted to get their assets into China, but were unable to do so. And when they were able to do it, it was oftentimes from what you would call the Pacific Rim and outside of China. And we were actually able to help them get their game assets into China, get them delivered to their end users so that they could play, get the updates, worked with, because we have a relationship with the providers in China and the telecom providers in China, we have the ability to distribute these out to the edge nodes, out to the end users in very, very, disparate regions of the country. And it's worked very well for us. And, we're constantly, we're constantly, just like everybody else, we're constantly trying to improve that performance, figure out the best way to do it, figure out the most cost efficient way to do it, and everything else. But these are types of things that we provide.
That sounds really interesting. And I wanted to tell you a bit of what we did in Affogata, and I wanted to pick your brain on what are your thoughts regarding it. So back in March, almost a year ago, Affogata created a report comparing the 4 biggest Battle Royale games. So that was Fortnite, PUBG, Call of Duty Mobile, and Apex Legends. So Affogata did a topic comparison and found that technical issues appear to be a recurring topic in the negative mentions of all games examined. So common complaints include server connection issues that cause lag and freezing throughout gameplay, with players complaining they were kicked out of the game altogether, which really takes away all the player experience, right? And other recurring complaints include bugs, glitches, and login issues. What do you think about this?
It's true. I mean, that's a common refrain, and it's a common thing that happens across the gaming industry itself. These large games have thousands upon thousands of players playing simultaneously. And as I mentioned earlier, they're in different parts of the world. And when they're competing and they're playing and they get on, the infrastructure needs to be robust to handle it. And, you said, they get kicked out of, they get kicked out of the game, or there might be lag. I mentioned earlier about complaints about 60 and 70 millisecond ping times and things like that. That's a cause of it. The network needs to be pristine. The ability to accelerate that in-game play, the ability to maintain that connection through all of it, and not all of a sudden drop it. Servers can become overwhelmed. Part of that happens with just because of the distribution of the connections and where people are playing and an overload of the server. But you can also look at it from the point of view that the security of it, and they could be attacked by any type of a DDoS type of situation. And so it is very true. The data you have is right in line with the majority of the complaints that are going on with the game players.
Right. And part of this report, like, people were, as we just mentioned before, like, they were really active complaints about this. Like, people really are unsatisfied by this, and people that are super connected and loyal to games can get very frustrated. Like, people saying like, it's a fantastic game overall, but the glitches just ruin the experience. Glitches are increasing a lot in this season and things like this. So it does ruin the experience. They can even stop playing games because of these things. So how do you think your technology at EdgeNext can help with these problems, and how can game studios benefit from it?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of different things. We've got obviously the initial piece of accelerating the game to the end user to get it there faster so that they can play helps. But also our edge compute nodes and our backbone, we have interconnectivity and peering across the globe that with hundreds of providers. And what it allows for us to do is to creating a backbone network that can interconnect with those game servers with as low a latency and as strong a connection as possible. They have the ability to leverage our edge computing infrastructure for additional technology. If they want to deploy, a piece of code, or if they want to deploy some kind of data analytics piece that they want to pull data back. A lot of these in-game plays, they're constantly looking at connectivity and things like that. And the servers and the technology behind these game studios, they're monitoring these and they're switching users from here to there. But they, when you switch a user off of one server to another, there's your disconnect. So they want to make sure that they've given best path, and these things that are allowed. These things are possible using EdgeNext because we're constantly monitoring the best way or the best path from point A to point B. And if an end user connects in, we can get them where they need to go.
Right. And this is the last question. It may be a bit hard, so if you need help, just let me know. But what do you think? Why do you think that Affogata and EdgeNext can be a great combination of tools for game studios? How can both tools help companies optimize their games?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. And I think really you look at it, you provide data, you provide information, we provide technology, but we also provide information as well. combining the two, so we could turn around and, with Affogata, we have a set of data that we can provide to you, we can provide to the end users, and you can collect the data that you also have, whether it's from end user responses and in-game play and so forth. You can coalesce those pieces of information and get these to the game studios. Whereas, we can turn around and provide that connectivity from end to end with the download speeds. We can turn around and show the adoption rates and whether or not somebody is finishing something and send this information, because now we could actually act as another end user for you. And Affogata now has not only the player end user, but the distribution end user, the technology end user that can turn around and build a model for these game studios. Says, look, you've got game players over here that are saying X, Y, Z. We've got data from these game players. We've also got data from EdgeNext that says your adoption rate over here is this because technically connectivity out here in this area and these providers are very slow and so forth, or they're not getting the best user experience or such and such. And we can not only funnel that back to you so that you can turn around and create a response model, but also funnel it back to the game studios themselves, and they can take the more technical pieces of information and adopt it into their development and design of their games and the distribution.
Definitely. And I think that's actually the best way to end the podcast, because I do think that we can benefit both to game studios to really just provide the best experience and optimize their games with all of these data that they can get from us. So I want to thank you, Josh, so much for being here today with me. It was super interesting to learn more about what you do at EdgeNext and how we can both help gaming studios provide the best experience and achieve their maximum potential.
Natalie, it was great being here, and I very much thank you for inviting me and having the opportunity to talk to you about all this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's it for today. Let's Talk Customer Feedback is a podcast made for player insights professionals, player feedback enthusiasts, gaming industry experts, and anything in between. The podcast is created by Affogata, the AI-driven player feedback analytics platform that cuts through the noise and brings you the player insights that move the needle. In each episode, we have a special guest from the industry, including Affogata's own customers that share their knowledge on what player feedback and the voice of the customer means for them and the companies they work at. Follow Let's Talk Customer Feedback on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you'd like to know more about Affogata and what it does, go to affogata.com and get more info on our social media, searching for Affogata on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time. Don't keep your players waiting.